Hello, it's Jodie from The 7 Effect, and happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there. I hope you've had an absolutely beautiful day. I know I sure have. I got this gorgeous card from my son Jazz, and this is basically my fantasy on the front of a card. He knows me well. And I got these divine scented candles, so feeling very grateful and lucky for that. But this message is for you if you are a working mum with a fantasy. And I'm not talking about kinky 50 Shades of Grey fantasies here, folks, but I'm talking about the kinds of fantasies that so many working mums have. And, you know, when my son Jazz turned 5 years old, we put him into a private school. I was a single mum and paying the mortgage on my own, and I got my first real job in the corporate world. Prior to that, I'd always been self-employed running my own businesses, but when I became single and financial pressures increased, I had to go and get a real job. And when you're working full-time and you're putting your son through private school and you're paying the mortgage on your own, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and you have to show up and you have to perform, or this is how I felt on a day-to-day basis. And I did really well, and I loved my job and I loved the company that I worked for. But the things that I used to fantasize about being able to do was just have the time to drop Jazz off to school in the morning, and even go in and read with the parents without feeling rushed. To be able to be there at 3:30 and pick him up from school, to be able to go and attend the sports days and things like that. And, all of those fantasies, they seem like such simple things, but they were massive luxuries to me back then. And I actually didn't get the opportunity to do it. And you know who did it for me was actually my mum. And I'll never forget the day when Jazz graduated from grade 6. So this is going back 3 years ago because he's in year 9 now. When Jazz graduated from year 6 and moved into what they call middle school at Emmanuel, that ceremony was incredibly emotional for me, because as we arrived, I went there with my mum and my nana and, of course, Jazz. And as we walked in, Mum knew so many of the other kids and she knew the other parents. And I looked around and I was like, God, I don't know hardly anyone here. I haven't been around. And then they showed this beautiful kind of video where they took snapshots and photos of the kids' journey from 5 years old in reception right through to grade 6. And it was very emotional for me. And I watched it, and I was really struck by this deep sense of guilt and grief of like, shit, I miss this. I actually wasn't present for a lot of this kind of stuff. And it was not only that moment, there were many other moments leading up to it, but that was kind of one of the moments where I said, this is not the life for me. This is not the dream. I'm not living the dream right here. And so I'm so grateful that this time of the year, May 2014, my beautiful friend Amy and I found the courage to go after the dream and to chase the fantasy. And the fantasy was to have a lifestyle business where I could drop my son off to school and pick him up from school, and where I could still earn enough money to pay the mortgage and the private school fees, but I could do it on my terms, and I could work with clients that I chose. And, now 2 years later, it's incredible when I look back at what we've achieved in the 7 Effect. And a lot of it's been thanks to people like you who have come along to our events, or who watch our posts, or who just get behind us and cheer us on. And now most of the clients that we're working with are indeed mums, and so many of those mums have the same fantasies that we had back then, or that I certainly had, which was just the fantasy of more time with my family and less time feeling like I'm on the treadmill running like crazy, trying to keep all of everything going, all of the bills and everything being paid for. So here's to you. If you're a mum out there, and particularly if you're a mum with a fantasy, I would really encourage you to keep the fantasy alive. But even more than that, don't let it be just a fantasy. Find a way to make it a reality. Because here's the thing, when Amy and I started on this path at the 7 Effect, yes, we had doubt, and yes, we asked the questions, what if it doesn't work? But we also focused on the other side of that question of what if it does work? And the beautiful thing is that it has. And it hasn't worked exactly to plan. Yes, it's tweaked and it's been changed, and things happen along the way. But what we've realized is that this is possible. This is absolutely possible. But the other thing that we're realizing is the more mums that we meet and the more mums that we work with is it's not just possible for us, but it's possible for anyone. And now with the technology and the internet, really any mum anywhere could actually build herself a lifestyle business and be able to completely escape the rat race and design herself a life where she spends more time with her friends and her family and even with herself. And, you know, let's face it, as mums, a lot of the time, it's not like we're always dreaming of more time with the kids, but sometimes it's like, oh my God, get them away from me. I want more time for myself. So if you're a mum and you're a mum that's working and you're a mum that has a fantasy, this message is for you. I encourage you to find a way to go after that fantasy and don't allow it to stay a fantasy, but create a plan and make it a reality, because if we can do it, you can do it, and it certainly is possible. That's all from me. Happy Mother's Day, and I hope you've had a beautiful day.